We have reached Luis Castillo in our review of the 2023 Seattle Mariners. What I think was a very strong year, ends disappointingly for sure, but there's a lot of good and some bad to talk about, and we will talk about it all. But before we talk about Luis Castillo and his season, we're going to talk about Simply Seattle. Simply Seattle provides the very best in Seattle sports gear. It's great stuff for those Mariners, of course, but also the Seahawks, the Kraken, the Supersonics, the Storm, the Sounders, the Huskies, the Cougars. Find it all at simplyseattle.com. Once you find it all, use code MOLLYWOP15 at checkout to save 15% off your order. Molly, Molly, WOP, WHOP 1 5. It's a great deal. Link in the description. Thank you so much to Simply Seattle. So Luis Castillo makes 33 starts for the Mariners. He has a 3.34 ERA, 14-9 record if you're into that sort of thing. 197 innings, a new career high. 219 strikeouts against 56 walks, does allow 28 homers. Overall, I think Luis Castillo was really good in 2023. A legitimate Cy Young candidate for the majority of the year. You know, maybe not the favorite ever, but was in that discussion for a lot of the year, in part because this wasn't the best pitching class, for lack of a better term, I guess, in the American League. Garrett Cole, very deserving of his Cy Young. Congratulations to him and some other guys who ended up finishing ahead of Castillo. But, in a normal year, he's probably not in that consideration. But he was for a majority of the year. And that's not an insult to him, obviously. Not an insult at all. What I think we'll remember most, unfortunately, for Luis Castillo are those last two starts. And there's no sugarcoating them. They're extremely disappointing. One's a disaster, and one's just not very good. 6 innings of 5-run baseball against the Astros. You expect more. You expect more for the guy you bring over to be your ace. And then that last start against the Rangers. It's funny to think, what if Luis Castillo pitches better against the Houston Astros, or the Texas Rangers that day, and the Mariners still win Sunday, and they sweep that, and the Texas Rangers don't make the playoffs? From that to world champions. It's funny how baseball works, isn't it? Maybe funny is the wrong word. You may be tempted to go that whole Luis Castillo isn't clutch route, and I beg you not to, because clearly he's capable of pitching well in big games. He pitched well in a lot of big games for the Mariners last year. And oh, by the way, he pitched really well in some of the biggest games in Mariner history in 2022. That start he had against the Blue Jays, man. It's one of the best pitched games in Seattle Mariner history, without question. Zero hyperbole. Superb. And then in game 2 of the ALDS, he was outstanding. He gets beat by Yordan Alvarez, who is just a stupid freak of nature. Takes a great pitch, hits him into a joke of a left field stance. He pitched fantastic that game. So, yes, very disappointing. Extremely disappointing how the season ended for Luis Castillo. But let's not do the whole Luis Castillo isn't built for this type of thing, because he clearly is. He just didn't pitch well in those games. It's a bad time to have 2 of your worst starts of the year. Let's look at the Savant stats here. A lot of well above average. Not a lot of great. A lot of well above average, and then some not so good numbers too, to be honest with you. His best numbers are his fastball velocity, and we'll talk about his fastball for sure. Averaged over 96 miles per hour. It's the 85th percentile of pitchers. Whiff rate of 30.6 is in the 81st percentile. K rate of 27.3. 27.3% of batters faced he struck out. 77th percentile. Walk rate. 7% of hitters walked is in the 72nd percentile. That was one of the biggest concerns with Castillo, is throwing consistent strikes. Since he's been a Seattle Mariner, that has not been an issue. Unfortunately, it certainly was in that final start where he walked 5 and couldn't get out of the 3rd inning. But overwhelmingly positive experience in terms of throwing strikes. Expected batting average 230, that's in the 68th percentile. Expected ERA 3.82, 63rd percentile. There are some bad numbers here. His average exit velocity of 90 miles an hour is bad, 23rd percentile. Didn't avoid barrels at a very high rate, 9.4%. 25th percentile of pitchers. 41.8% hard hit rate, bad. Ground ball rate, 33, 39.5. Bad, Pop-ups are fine, and he did generate enough weak contact to be relatively successful, although I just gave you the hard hit and the average exit velocity, so not as many. I'm just saying ground ball rate doesn't have to be a death factor. It's great to get those ground balls. It's very hard to hit the ball over the fence if the ball's hit on the ground. Extension, the bottom 1 percentile at 5.6, and we'll talk about that. Heck, we might as well just talk about it now because I want to talk about the pitch types real quick. Well, actually, not that quickly. So, looking at the run value per pitch, what has been really interesting for Luis Castillo is he's changed quite a bit. Change is maybe a play on words, I guess. In 2022 and 2023, Luis Castillo has had one of the very best fastballs in baseball. And in terms of run value, according to Baseball Savant, in the 100th percentile of all pitchers. He threw his four-seam fastball 320 plate appearances, threw it 1,400 times. Batters hit only 165 and only slugged 384 on that, with a whiff rate of 33%, meaning 1 out of 3 fastballs batter swung and missed at. Strikeout percentage of 32.8. That 384 slugging percentage really stands out because, that's typically the pitch that has the highest slugging mark. You don't command your fastball, hitters hit it long way. Go bye-bye. That wasn't the case for Castillo. Not even a little bit. His fastball is now elite. It is one of the elite four-seam fastballs. His sinker's pretty good too. Weighted on base average against his sinker of 294, 282 against his four-seamer. Didn't get as many whiffs as it, not even close, 13.6, but it was an effective pitch. The slider is a really interesting one because he throws his slider 22.1% of his time, 710. Batters hit 234 against it. That's a fairly solid number. Weighted on base average of 311. That's a pretty solid number. Whiff percentage of 37.8. That's a great number. Strikeout percentage 33.1. That's a very solid number. Hitter slugged 455 against it. I don't think he's had great command of the slider, and it's a little frustrating because it has become his go-to secondary pitch, clearly. But it's interesting that it's become his go-to pitch because for those of you who weren't familiar with Luis Castillo, I wasn't familiar with your game meme. I love to mess with people on that one. This guy had arguably the best changeup in all of baseball in 2019 and 2018. In particular, 2019. This thing was disgusting. And he threw it a lot. He threw it more than any other pitch. Hitters hit 128 against it. And he got a whiff on it 47.8% of the time and got a K percentage 47% of the time. That's just stupid. That is just stupid. That makes that one of the very best pitches in all of baseball. Not just one of the best changeups, not just Luis Castillo's best pitch. It makes it one of the very best pitches in baseball. For whatever reason, it hasn't been nearly as effective. If we just go by run value, 2018, it's a 16. 2019, it's a 28. 2020, it's a 1. 2021, it's a 3. 2022, it's a -6. 2023, it's a -9. Last year against that changeup, which he threw 500 times, batters hit 280 and slugged 420 against it. Now, he generated 32.5% whiff rate. That's good. Strikeout percentage 23.82. He wasn't using the pitch as much with two strikes. He really likes that slider, or he likes to challenge you with that heater. Those aren't terrible, though. But that slugging percentage is bad. And I can't help but wonder how much of that has to do with like a lack of movement to the offering, I guess, or less movement to the offering. And the fact that a lot of hitters who have or pitchers who have a lot of success with their change generate a ton of extension. Luis Castillo does not. He's not a tiny guy, but he's not a guy who the baseball gets on you real quick. He relies on stuff more than deception. But it is weird to see how that change has, well, changed. And I'd like to see him get back to working on using that pitch as more of a put away pitch. There's nothing wrong with his fastball, obviously, and his slider is a very solid offering as well. But if I was the pitching coach of the Seattle Mariners or the pitching development coordinator or whatever the heck position they call it now, I'd be really trying to tap into that thing. Maybe it's gone. It's possible it's gone. It's possible that he never reaches those heights with that pitch ever again. But just 4 years ago, this guy had one of the elite pitches in baseball, and he still does with his fastball. But I'd love to see that fastball change combo come back. I really would. I really would, as if that's a controversial statement to want Luis Castillo to have two of the best pitches. I also think it's worth pointing out here. So I was looking at the OPS by month. He got off to such an unbelievably good start. Those first 6 starts, 505 OPS and a 1.82 ERA. May was just okay, 3.72. June was good, 3.23. July was very good, 2.92. 604 OPS in July, 734 in June. Not so great, but it works. It works. August, solid, 3.5 and a 636 OPS against. In September, it ends up being an 825 OPS and a 4.96 ERA. And it's almost entirely based on the struggles of those last two. He had one other not so great start in that month. But there were some really good starts that September as well. I mean, it pulls up just the last 5 starts he made, there were some really good outings for Luis Castillo. It just those last 2, man. It's so disappointing. But yeah, just to give you those numbers, it's like we're having a weird conversation here, and that's fine with me. He throws 6 shutout innings against the Rays in a game they had to have. Had to have that 1-0 win. He gives up 2 runs against the Angels over 6 innings. Strikes out 8. Start after that, 7 innings of 2-run baseball with 8 strikeouts against the A's. Those last 2, though. I just keep coming back to it, and we have to because it's a review of 2023. It would have been great if he got some more run support. It is worth pointing out that those 2 poor starts that Luis Castillo had are a 5-1 loss and a 6-1 loss. So, yes, Luis Castillo disappointed in those. And we've talked about it a lot, how things change. Your offensive approach changes when you fall down a big number. But they only scored 1 run. Let's not forget that. Let's not forget that in those 2 dreadful starts, the Mariners scored a total of 2 runs, 1 run apiece. Food for thought. Anyway, I'm very confident in Luis Castillo being a top of the rotation starter. Am I 100% sure he's the very best starter on the Seattle Mariners? No. Is he the one that I'm the most confident in right now, though? Yeah. Yeah. All due respect to Kirby, all due respect to Gilbert, all due respect to a healthy Robbie Ray. Luis Castillo is that guy. I love this rotation. We're going to talk about one more member of this rotation before the old videos come to a close. But I really believe in Luis Castillo, and I think outside of those two final starts, which again, it's not all his fault. One run in each of those games. Outside of that, though, I think he was pretty darn good, and I'm very confident in him going forward. He's only 31. Seems like Luis Castillo's been around forever. Only 31 years old. Zero reason for me to think he's anything but a top of the rotation guy. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you going to hit like and subscribe on this video? I know you're going to do the last one because it really helps me, and I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much for your support. I hope you guys all had a very wonderful Christmas or enjoying a very wonderful holiday, however you celebrate. Have a great one. Luis Castillo, pretty darn good one.